Hello and welcome to episode 145 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm Devon Dundee. Sigmund is off this week, so I have the pleasure of being joined by guest co-host Jonathan Reed. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Great to be back. Devon.
You've been on the show before. Listeners will probably recognize you. If they don't recognize you from previous episodes here, they'll probably recognize you from your recent appearance on App Stories. Just a couple of episodes ago, really awesome conversation. We're not going to have any hot takes on soda beverages here. We'll leave that to App Stories. But if you haven't heard the episode where Jonathan's on, it's really good.
Well, I hope they're going to be quizzing you on your beverage choices when you appear on App Stories. So we'll be looking forward to your take.
I'll have to come prepared, but I probably won't be smooth enough to actually have a can ready to go for the show like you did, which was great.
Well, I mean, little sort of behind the scenes note on that. I actually bought the can about an hour before the podcast recording. I just saw it in the shop and I thought, oh, perfect. So it was not not that well planned ahead.
That's still great. Good eye. I'm doing something weird this week. We don't have video on this show, so you can't tell, but usually when we're recording, I have my iPad mini for my notes. And that's what I'm referring to, but I left my iPad mini in the car, which my wife drove to work. So I am looking at you on my Mac, which is a new experience for me, but I'm having some fun experimenting with the Mac. And I got to use the windowing options for the first time in this most recent update, and they're really great. So I've got you in one corner, got my notes on one half, and then I've got another app in another corner. And I'm kind of loving it.
You're putting me in the corner, Devon. Yeah.
Nobody puts Jonathan in the corner, right?
I hope not.
All right. Well, we've got a great show this week. We're going to talk about Trakt and a recent TV tracking move in Jonathan's family. We're going to look forward to the release of the first immersive music video for Apple Vision Pro. And we're going to start with our highlight on the return of Bad Sisters. 2 years after the accidental death of Grace's abusive husband, the close-knit Garvey sisters may have moved on, but when past truths resurface, the ladies are thrust back into the spotlight. Suspicions are at an all-time high, lies are told, secrets are revealed, and the sisters are forced to work out who they can trust.
After everything that happened, things are finally looking up.
Grace and Ian!
Did you ever think about what we did?
I killed my husband. We are all involved in this.
We covered up a murder.
The world's better off without you. Even the Pope would say that.
Talk to me, Roger. I ain't no good when I see it.
I know what you did.
Of course, Bad Sisters is executive produced by Sharon Horgan, who also stars alongside Anne-Marie Duff, Ava Berthistle, Sarah Green, and Eve Hewson playing our beloved Garvey sisters. This season, there's more secrets, more lies, and seemingly at least one more body. We are definitely back in the world of Bad Sisters, Jonathan. So tell me, were you excited to jump back into this one after the first season?
Yeah, I think I was. After the first season, I felt that they wrapped it up pretty well, and I kind of thought, when they announced season 2, I thought, do we need a season 2? I didn't but I do have every faith in Sharon Horgan, who I really revere. I think she's one of our premier writing talents in the UK. So I think that sort of reassured me a little bit. And so I think coming up to it and then seeing the trailer, it's difficult to resist the dynamics and the chemistry between the Garvey sisters. So I think in the end I was looking forward to jumping back in, and I think after the first episode, which we maybe touch on a little bit, I'm glad they're back, and it seems to be working pretty well so far. So yeah, excited for the return. How about you?
Yeah, for sure. I am as well. I think what I appreciated about the first season is that it was meant to be a contained story. There was no concept at the beginning of a season 2. And if you even look at the news kind of around the renewal and how it was communicated, I think it was a surprise even to the creative team that there would be a continuation of this story. I believe the first season was based on a book, and so they had source material there, but the second season, they're kind of going beyond that. And so it's interesting. There's been shows that have done that before, and I mean, we're actually seeing Apple do that with something like Presumed Innocent, and so it's kind of, I guess, maybe becoming a little bit of a trend to go beyond your source material, but it's always a question of what happens then, because you've got these characters that you've come to know and this story that you maybe even experienced through a different medium, but now you've got to kind of see where that goes in the future without anything to lean back on, which I think is kind of brave, but I think it works really well here. The story ended and was wrapped up very, very well, but there are still some storylines that they can get back to and kind of reopen based on the way things ended. So I'm excited with the second season, and yeah, I think it really is a testament to the success of Apple TV Plus and their programming that they pick something and put this team together that have done such a great job with it that they're able to continue the story and continue to bring in an audience for a second season.
Yeah, for sure, and it did really well over here. I think that the it got some good attention over in the States and worldwide, but I think as part of their desire to reach obviously various parts of the globe with Apple TV Plus, this is a really good show. I think alongside something like Slow Horses that they can really push out in the UK and parts of Europe and so forth. So I think that it's a really good, I guess, string to their bow to have. I'll just correct you slightly. It wasn't actually based on a book. It was based on a TV series, a Belgian TV series called Clan.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
right.
Created by Malin Sarah Gojin. So this is actually going beyond, I believe, that TV series. So this is kind of, I don't know how close the original was to the original TV series. But yeah, we're sort of in very new territory here because it's definitely a new storyline. And I think interestingly as well, I noticed in the credits that it says season 2 story by Sharon Horgan, which maybe suggests that series creators Brett Baer and Dave Finkel aren't involved. So that's, I mean, whether that affects anything in any way, I think it just means that we're going to get a more singular creative vision from Sharon Horgan rather than adapting something. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how different the show is overall compared to the first season, maybe in its structure. So yeah, it's been great. I think one thing I'd like to ask you though is, they say you should never pick your favorite sibling, but I'm going to ask you to pick your favorite sibling. Do you have a favorite Garvey sister? If you could be pushed to choose one, who's your favorite?
That's tough because I love them all. I mean, they're all so great, and they all have kind of their strengths. But if I had to pick a favorite, if you're forcing me, I would have to say BB would be my favorite. I think
oh, snap.
there's a lot of layers to her, and she comes off as very like gruff and off-putting, but there's definitely a depth to how she feels about her sisters and her family in general. And yeah, I really like her personality and the storylines that they choose for her and the way they slowly reveal her personal life. Like, she's kind of the least open, I think, of the sisters, but it's kind of cool to see them unfold what she's got going on. I hope I didn't steal your pick for favorite Garvey sister.
That was my pick. Yeah, I mean, I think mine is for a different reason. She's just very dry and, very eye-rolly and sarcastic, which I think kind of fits in with a lot of my maybe sense of humor and personality sometimes. So maybe that's why I connect with her. But she's got a cool eye patch as well, which is always an addition. So yeah, I do like her the most, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, she's great, but I don't think you could go wrong in picking a favorite Garvey sister. And definitely the show's strength is in seeing them together, that bond that they share, the way they push each other and defend each other. I think it's a really beautiful thing to see on screen. So jumping into season 2, this first episode, I wasn't surprised to see the sisters as close as ever, but I was taken aback, I think, when we see where Grace is, when we meet back up with her. She's probably the most dynamic of the sisters in terms of the changes that she's been throughout the time that we spent with her and how far she's come. And now as we pick up with season 2, the first episode is her wedding, 2 years after the events of season 1, after the death of her husband, who was not a good man by any means. Now she's remarrying. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think about this wedding where we pick up and the dynamic between Grace and a big returning character this season, Roger, who was her neighbor in the first season?
Yeah, it's I mean, with the wedding, I think that I think it's, legit. I think that Ian seems like a decent guy. The actor that they've cast, Owen McDonnell, I think a lot of people might recognize from Killing Eve, played Eve's husband, and he's got a very kind of everyman, down to earth kind of quality, which there is definitely builds into the casting. Whether that's like a bit of a red herring, and there'll be a turn in that character, I guess we'll wait and see. But I think they've very deliberately cast that actor in a way that kind of makes him seem like he is the real deal and he's a good guy. With regard to Roger and Grace, I mean, it's quite sad, really. I think obviously Roger's very in love with Grace, and Grace really likes him, but just not in that way. And it's tough to watch, really, because he's a sweet guy. I'm very, very happy that they've brought back Roger in a big way, because I'm a big fan of Michael Smiley, the actor. Big UK actor over here, and lots of sort of. I mean, I originally remember seeing him in Spaced, Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright and Jessica Stevenson's show back in the day, and I just kept seeing him pop up from in various things in the years to come, and I really like him. So I'm glad he's getting more to do this season, which is great. Yeah, it seems a bit easy that he would just give up the secret. So we'll see what happens. I'm kind of intrigued, I think is the word, as to where it's going to go, really, with this. But yeah, what about yourself?
When we didn't know that a second season was coming, I just always pictured in my head that Grace and Roger ended up together. That he was so supportive of her, saw her through, I mean, her darkest moment, really, and was there for her, and that maybe at some point they would have fallen in love, and that if she did have another wedding, it would be to him. But it's unfortunate that it seems like this secret that they share has kind of forced them apart in a way that, Grace doesn't want to dwell on that part of her life, which is understandable, but kind of creates a rift between them that sets up for this tension this season where Roger's coping with what they've done and doesn't really have Grace to lean on, and so he turns other ways, and that creates some issues. So, I mean, happy to see Grace find love. I mean, I'm always going to root for good things for Grace. I think that, she's a sweet character and someone we want to see win, but the way that things have gone with her and Roger, I don't think it bodes well for her this season. No. and could take her down some dark paths, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so, potentially. I think we should probably talk about Angelica as well, who is, I correct me if I'm wrong, because me and my wife, when we were watching this, we kept during the episode kept saying, so hold on, who exactly is she? I got the impression that she was Roger's sister. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Is that right? Yes. Okay. We weren't 100% sure on that. Angelica. So yeah, the prick from last season. He's not here anymore. He's dead. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find a more compelling antagonist than Angelica. She is just she's like brimming with sort of scheming plans, and she's working the game and going to try and work people against each other, which the little comments here and there to the Garvey sisters just seem all very well placed. And Fiona Shaw she's one of the best. She's one of the UK's best actors. She's incredible. I think they must have been very happy when they got her to sign on to the part, because she's a really great addition. So it'll be interesting to see where her character goes. What were your thoughts on Angelica?
She seems like such a great fit for the world. I mean, it just makes all the sense in the world that Roger would have this kind of overbearing sister who we haven't met yet, but she's always kind of been around in the Garvey sisters' lives on the kind of periphery. And yeah, she seems perfect to be the antagonist this season. She's got what we would say in the South. She kind of does that bless your heart kind of thing where she's very kind to your face, and then, you know, behind closed doors, it could be a very different story, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And she also has, to me, a little bit of Roger's desire to belong, but hers just is combined with a more negative or cunning aspect where, okay, if you're not going to include me, then I can make you pay for it kind of thing.
Yeah.
And whereas Roger, he doesn't seem to have that kind of vindictive side to him. So I could see them as siblings. I think there's actually a joke in the episode where someone asks, is that his girlfriend or his date?
Yeah.
And someone says, yeah, kind of both. But I mean, really, you know, they're siblings. And
Yeah, it was a good one. He said, is that his sister or his date? And she said, oh, it's his sister. And he said, yeah, you didn't answer my question.
Oh, exactly. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was brilliant. That's also the great thing about this show, is just the little verbal back and forth between the sisters, which you're totally convinced that they are all sisters, because they're just the chemistry between them is really incredible. I think one other quick one I want to add is I really liked in the first episode. I really liked the new detective, the young detective, the girl. She's really fun. I really like her, but also I think seems potentially like she's a bit of a dark horse in terms of she's actually very, very smart, but just maybe a bit too fresh faced and a bit to understand exactly how to do everything. So I'm very keen to see where that character goes too. She was great.
She's awesome. My favorite line from her in the first episode is, "Mom, I didn't make detective just because I got my driving license."
Yeah. Yes.
That was great.
Yeah. She's great. I mean, like, you know, it's Sharon Horgan writes, you know, as why wouldn't she? But she writes very witty female characters so well, and every female character on this show always has a good line or two, at the very least, which is great to see.
The one set of characters we didn't see in the first episode that I'm really interested to see if they pop back up is the Claflin brothers. They were so prominent in the first season. I really want to find out what's happening with Matt and Thomas and how they play into this whole storyline of, you know, the investigation seemingly being reopened and trying to figure out what actually happened back in season 1 and what's going on with this whole family now. So I think if there's any characters that I'm looking forward to meeting up again in season 2 that we haven't yet, those are the two that I'm most looking forward to. Is there anybody else that you're looking forward to seeing again?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Matt again. I think we'll definitely see him again. I don't think that storyline with Becca is over yet. It was sort of left hanging at the end of the first season. This new boyfriend that Becca has, you know, they seem to be having fun, but it doesn't seem like it's one of those ones that would stick long term. So I suspect that he'll come back into the picture at some point. In fact, I'm certain he will come back at some point. So we'll have to see what happens. But I'm almost certain that story between those two characters is not over just yet.
Well, lots to look forward to in season 2 of Bad Sisters. We're just getting started this week, so be sure to check out the return of Bad Sisters today on Apple TV Plus, and join us as we watch throughout the season, and join us later in the season when we do a recap once it's all over. Since I have you on this week, Jonathan, I wanted to talk to you about something you wrote about in Mac Stories Weekly last week, and of course we won't give away the whole article because it's for club members to go check out and read, and if you are a club member and haven't read it yet, be sure to check it out. We'll link it in the show notes. If you're interested and you aren't yet a club member, this might be a great chance to try it out and see what it's all about. Jonathan has a weekly column in the newsletter, and we have tons of other great stuff in there as well. But this past week, you wrote about a very interesting thing you did with Trakt and with using it to transition from one TV tracking app to the other in a really interesting way. Can you give us just like a very high-level overview of what you did?
Yeah, so I've been using Sequel, the TV, movie, and book and game tracking app for a long time by our good friend Roman. I've been using that, I don't know, like a couple of years now, 2 or 3 years. And before that, I was using an app called TV Time, which my wife was also using. We're very keen movie, TV watchers. We like to track everything. And when I switched over to Sequel, she just, I think, through a case of like, oh, it just seems like too much effort, and just stuck with TV Time. But recently, she's been watching me check things off on Sequel, and being a bit jealous of the interface. It looks very nice. It's a very enjoyable app, and TV Time's become a little bit unreliable recently. And I think actually the app is actually not available on the App Store anymore, or at least currently. You can go to the website. The website seems to still exist, and the app still works. But yeah, she got a bit frustrated with that, and then sort of set me a challenge of can I get her watch history and the statuses of her TV watching over into Sequel without having to one by one mark everything off. So I did a bit of searching online and managed to find a Python script which would pull the data out of a GDPR request for all of her data from TV Time and convert that one by one through a Python script, which took about 5 hours, and put it into Trakt. The idea being that Sequel syncs with Trakt. And so if I added everything into Trakt, then my wife could open up Sequel and download Sequel, open it up, and sync with her Trakt account, and that would bring everything into Sequel. And it took a while, but it worked perfectly, and all the details are in the column, of course. But it does show, I think, how something like Trakt is a really important backbone to just tracking your watching habits. And it's something I'm going to also try and build my movie watching habits into. I currently use Letterboxd for tracking my movies, but I think I'd like to have a central location as well, just so I can switch apps if I wanted to, or if I wanted to use the data in some other way. It's just a good main area to have everything in. And it also has really good end-of-year roundups where it will show you how much TV you watched, what was the most watched show, who is the most watched actor and director that you saw. And these are really fun end-of-year things to have, and it's not something that you get on the TV app or Sequel even. And it's just a really fun thing to have, so I enjoy having that. But I'm just really coming round to the idea of Trakt being a central part of my watching tracking. Do you use Trakt?
I do use Trakt, and reading your story, I had to chuckle a little bit when you talked about signing up for the Trakt API, which is amazing because, it's free, and it's something that for these little projects like this, it's so cool that you can register, get your API key, and then just run this script to do this thing that ordinarily, you'd have to wait for a developer to make the tool themselves and put it on the App Store and do all this. But thanks to the API, you can have that script to do it yourself. I use the API for my shortcut watch history journal to log what I'm watching into my journaling app. And that's something that I had a lot of fun playing with when I first started exploring that. And it's been rock solid. I haven't had to touch that part of the shortcut since I published it because it's just worked. And since then, Sequel has added shortcuts actions, so I've kind of implemented those as well. That's actually how I personally log my watching into my journal now, is through the Sequel shortcuts actions. But every once in a while, I'll flip back over to the Trakt API just to make sure that it's working and all my data is syncing over. And it really is perfect. I think Trakt, in a lot of ways, has become what RSS is for a lot of people, in the sense that you can just take your OPML file, put it into any reader app that supports RSS, and you can have your feeds with you. It's very easy to transport. Yeah. Or maybe it's like a service, one of those feed reading services that you can sign up for and sign into different clients and take all your stuff with you.
Yeah, precisely. I think that's it.
It has become, like you said, a backbone of a whole category of apps on the App Store. And it really is just so impressive what it does. I had never tried Trakt. I was using SQL, and then when SQL added Trakt support, I thought, okay, let me just try this and see what it's all about. But with Trakt, I mean, you can use different tracking apps on different platforms. If your preferred one isn't available on a certain platform, if I wanted to track from Windows for some reason, I could get a Trakt client for Windows or just log into the Trakt website, log it, and it would sync over to SQL and any other client that uses Trakt. So it really is so impressive. And the more that I dive into it, I know this is old news for a lot of people, but I personally just am amazed that something like this exists, that it's so accessible, and that it's relying on crowdsourced information from people going in and entering this information and keeping it up to date. And there's other resources that are out there that are amazing, like the movie database, which is so cool as well. It's such a cool community of people who love TV and film and invest in it, and then create these awesome tools that we get to use. So yeah, I just thought it was a good opportunity, given what you wrote about this week, to just reflect on Trakt and how we're using it and how important it is, and just how much we rely on a tracking app or a tracking tool like Trakt and all the clients for it, because I mean, there's just so much to watch now, right? And so many great things to keep up with, not only what we cover here with Apple TV Plus, but I mean, we give you picks every week of different things to check out. And with a tool like Trakt, you could make your watch list and keep up with what you want to watch, keep up with releases, keep up with where you're at in your various TV shows. And it really is just so impressive.
Yeah, it's great. And I think it's just good to be able to look back on what you've watched as well sometimes, which I think, I mean, Roman would probably might say the same thing, but with something like an app like SQL, diving into your data and seeing the most watched actor that you had would just be like another thing that would sort of overcrowd an app like SQL, which is more focused on tracking and keeping a watch list and marking things off as you're done, and it does that brilliantly. But something like Trakt gives you a nice end of year reflection, and actually it's very good because me and my wife, because we're nerds, we do our top 5 at the end of the year. So we both independently write our top 5 movies and TV shows, and then we take it in turns to sort of read them back to each other, and then we just chat about what we've watched during the year, which is a very nerdy thing to do, but it's a fun thing we do every year. And something like Trakt means we don't have to remember what we watched, because I can just go check Trakt and see what I watched, whereas previous years we've had to sort of think back hard to what was on TV this year that we watched, what movies did we watch, and this makes it a whole lot better. But I think we should probably also touch on the Apple TV app for Trakt, which is really interesting in that it almost functions as an alternative to the TV app on Apple TV, in that it has a watch next queue, like the next episode to watch. You can mark things as watched. You can have a watch list, and also, interestingly, unlike the TV app, it can actually launch straight into a Netflix show from the app. So we all know, of course, Netflix doesn't integrate with the TV app, but if you find a show on Trakt, you can hit play, and it won't play the episode straight away, but it will take you to the episode page in your Netflix app, and then you can hit play, which is it's an advantage over the TV app, and I think it's very intriguing what they've done with it. I believe you've had a chance to play around with it as well.
Yes, I was testing this out recently, and I was really impressed with it as well. The up next queue in the Trakt app is very cool. I mean, it's what you'd expect. It's the next episode of the things that you're watching, and you can launch straight into them. The first time I launched straight into a Netflix series, I felt like I had broken some rule or cracked some code. It really just, it's so foreign. I mean, because we're just trained to think, because it's not in the TV app, that we can't do it, but Trakt can deep link, which is awesome. And it deep links into other apps as well. I was able to launch a Disney Plus show with it. I think it might get a little tripped up on some of the Hulu shows that show up in Disney Plus. So there's some like edge cases like that where it's tricky to know where something's available and how to deep link into it. So that's just a complication of the streaming world that I think, developers are constantly contending with. And honestly, the TV app gets that wrong sometimes too. I don't have Hulu installed on my device anymore, but it still tries to launch it sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't watch this show till you open Hulu. It's like, well, actually it's in Disney Plus. Just, let me open this app I already have. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Trakt, it has the top shelf as well, which is how I usually start a show on Apple TV is you put it in the top row and then you don't even have to open the app. It just gives you those suggestions up above the app icon. And you can just quick launch from there, which is awesome. It has your history as well, which is great. You can go back and browse what you've already watched. And then it, of course, has recommendations for popular TV shows and films as well. So it's a really well done app.
And it also has upcoming. So this is something that I like actually in the sequel app. I can see upcoming episodes for the week. What's the next upcoming episode of this or that, which I find really handy for things that maybe aren't on a weekly basis. So a show like Last Week Tonight with John Oliver isn't on every week. He'll sometimes take a week off or 2 or 3 weeks off. So sometimes it's nice to see ahead of time if he's going to be on this week. And this is something that the TV app doesn't have, but it is something that the Trakt TV app has, Apple TV app has, which is a nice addition. I like that because it's something I really like about Sequel, and to have that underneath the up next queue, it's really good.
Yeah, I like to know what's coming and on what days and how behind I'm going to feel by the end of the week because there's too much to watch and not enough time. But yeah, it's well done. And if you haven't tried Trakt for Apple TV, or if you've never tried Trakt at all, now's a great time to dive into it. And it just unlocks so many different capabilities across your Apple TV and any client app that you want to log into as well. And you and I both use SQL and recommend it. And this is a great complement for that as well on the Apple TV. So definitely check that out. We'll link it in the show notes. And we just wanted to take a few minutes to appreciate Trakt in light of some experiments that you've been doing. And also check out Jonathan's article about Trakt and this transfer process in the club. We just spent quite a bit of time talking about an Apple TV app that we enjoy, but we also have some app news. Do you want to kick us off?
Sure, yeah. Netflix has just added a new feature to its iOS app called Moments, which allows users to save clips from their favorite titles and share them with others. I found that this is a really, really interesting one. I think I haven't been able to try it out myself, but I've seen in the sort of demo of it. But it is, from what I can see, you share a clip with a friend and it will launch them into the Netflix app. Is that correct?
I believe so. I haven't seen them in action yet. They've put out the press release and they're doing kind of an ad campaign on it, but I haven't tried it myself either. But yeah, I think that's what it does. It's not actually a video, but it will launch you to that timestamp in the app.
Yeah, which I think it's a great idea. That's a really clever social idea. I mean, you're talking about the latest episode of, what's coming up? What's on Netflix that's big? So Squid Game's coming up, isn't it? So you can imagine people sharing their favorite scenes from that. Maybe their favorite gruesome death with a friend. That's there's obviously other more PG ones you can share, but that sort of thing is really good, and that's what gets the conversation going. That's why Netflix is as big as it is, because everyone talks about Netflix, and this is just going to only enhance that.
Yeah, the concern with screen recording and screenshots in these apps and why they all block them is because of piracy. And so this is a great way to get around piracy while also encouraging sharing. I'd still love to see them implement a way to at least create like GIFs of moments to share on social media, so you're not having to actually open up the Netflix app to see what someone's talking about.
It's GIF, Devon. It's GIF.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend anybody.
It's the debate. I'm sure there's several people listening who call it GIF and several people who call it GIF, but it is GIF though. I just don't want to start any arguments, but it's GIF. It's GIF, guys.
I appreciate it. Well, I think that streaming services investing in sharing in whatever form or format or however you pronounce it. I think that making it easier to share these moments is smart. And hopefully this is just a first step towards that. And maybe we'll eventually see other streamers, including Apple, do this as well. Because it's an ongoing frustration when you want to share something funny or that amazed you from your favorite show. And it's so hard to. So yeah, that's great to see. Meanwhile, a different kind of sharing is soon going to become more difficult for Mac subscribers because they are cracking down on password sharing. During an earnings call, parent company Warner Brothers Discovery said that customers will start seeing very soft messaging about the upcoming change, and after that initial message, more strict rules will be put into place starting next year. CFO Gunnar Weidenfels said that Max would be asking viewers who have not signed up or multi-household members to pay a little bit more. So we saw this with Netflix, now we're seeing it with Disney, and it looks like Max is going to try their hand at it too, just adding that extra little fee. If you want to share your password, that's fine, but you're going to have to pay extra, or that person's going to have to get their own account or lose access. So it's worked out well for Netflix. I think it's working for Disney. So as frustrating as it is for viewers, it seems to become more and more of a thing in streaming. And if you're sharing your password with Max, this is definitely something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I was recently kicked out of my friend's Disney account, which was devastating. But I get it. I think in certain respects it is fine. Like I was sharing my friend's account, and I think that he was sharing it. He had his family, and he had me, and he had another friend as well. And I get that. Like that's I think it's fair to ask us to pay for it. I'm not part of his family. I'm not related. Don't live near him. So I understand it in certain respects. I think that where we hit the difficulties is certainly where you have members of your family living away from home, like maybe if they go off to college or so forth. I think that's probably the biggest one, is like your child goes off to college, and why can you not share a password with him? I think that's incredibly silly. But I kind of see it in other respects as well. Also, I feel that someone mentioned this recently, that it's a very specific setup to be able to share your password with your family, but not friends. Whereas some people, their friends are their family. Mm-hmm. And I see that's an interesting alternative angle. And I certainly appreciate that. And I think maybe a bit more nuanced in this crackdown on password would be appreciated, I think, rather than just you're not living at this billing address, pay for it, which I think is maybe a bit too harsh.
Yeah, and that's where Apple's family sharing really, I think, excels here, because they don't have any rules about who you can add. It's just there's a number limit, and you can add people. I think you have to be in the same region to access those subscriptions, I believe. But other than that, I mean, they're not saying who is considered family, which is smart. And I wonder if something like that could work in this situation, but really, I mean, what this is an effort to boost sales, and that's what they're going for with this Max crackdown.
Yeah. Over here in the UK, Channel 4 has become the first UK broadcaster to release a Vision OS app, bringing its content natively to the Apple Vision Pro alongside an immersive environment based on the set of Taskmaster, the UK comedy game show, task-orientated sort of quiz show, which is incredibly successful both in the UK and outside of the UK. I find this shocking, honestly, really surprised by this. For those who don't know about Channel 4, Channel 4 is partially funded by the taxpayer. So in the BBC itself is funded entirely by the taxpayer. Channel 4 also gets some of that tax money, as well as using advertising and being sort of privately run. So it's kind of like a halfway house. And the fact that they've put money into developing an app and an immersive environment to appeal to what can't be a huge amount of users really who are going to watch Channel 4 on their Vision Pro is I'm surprised by that, really. They sort of justified the investment in that, but nevertheless, really good to see, and great to see another immersive environment to watch your TV on.
Yeah, I'm a little sad I can't take advantage of this one because, it is region locked, but I guess I'm experiencing a small taste of what other people experience with the US streaming services who don't use a VPN to access them. So it's fair enough, but it is cool to see one of the UK broadcasters getting on board because, with the initial US launch, we saw Disney and Max and then eventually Paramount Plus. But when it came to the UK, I don't think we saw any video providers in the UK jumping on Division OS natively. So it's cool to see Channel 4 has done that. And if you are in the UK and have a Vision Pro, definitely download the Channel 4 app and let us know how you enjoy watching TV on the set of Taskmaster.
Yeah, send us some screenshots for sure.
Moving away from app news into the physical world, Apple has teamed up with Asoline to produce a limited edition book that commemorates Apple Music's 100 Best Albums of All Time list. Priced at $450 and limited to 1,500 copies, the book includes artwork for each album, editorial content created for the list, and a foreword by none other than Zane Lowe himself. It's available now for pre-order while supplies last. Now, I know the list was kind of controversial. I mean, any top 100 list, especially when you're trying to name the best albums of all time, I mean, that's just a hefty load to bear. And so I know that, people disagree with different elements of the list, and that's totally fair. But I think it's cool for people who want to have sort of keepsake to commemorate this huge undertaking that Apple Music did. This will be a cool kind of coffee table book to have, and it will go well if you have the Designed by Apple in California book as well. Now, our very own Sigmund Judge is a bit of a collector himself. He picked up a book by the same company that commemorated the making of Killers of the Flower Moon, and he shared some photos of that. It's a pretty cool book, and I mean, very high quality, meant to be one of these very limited collector's items. So yeah, this is a cool collaboration, one that we've seen Apple do before, and if you're interested in that, definitely check it out. We'll put a link in the show notes. Speaking of Apple Originals, let's talk about release news. This week, Apple announced a new 10-part nature docuseries called The Secret Lives of Animals, which is coming to Apple TV Plus on December 18th. Narrated by Hugh Bonneville, the series comes from the BBC Studios Natural History Unit and highlights 77 unique species in 24 countries, revealing stunning, never-before-seen animal behaviors and highlighting the remarkable intelligence of the natural world. Pretty cool to see Apple linking up with the BBC Studios Natural History Unit once again. They produce some amazing documentaries, and Apple just likes to kind of surprise drop these nature docuseries every once in a while, just kind of keep that part of the service going strong, and I love to see it.
Yeah, it's great. Hugh Bonneville's got a nice voice. You got to get the nice British tones alongside your BBC nature series. It's kind of the tradition. So yeah, it'll be looking forward to checking this out for sure. And in development news, Variety reports that Apple Studios and A24 are developing a film adaptation of Michael Lewis's book Going Infinite, which tells the roller coaster story of Sam Bankman-Fried and cryptocurrency exchange FTX. Lena Dunham, of all people, is set to write the script for this film, which is certainly an intriguing choice, but I'm sure she'll do a great job.
Yeah, this is one of those stories that I think a lot of people are racing to tell. It's still so recent that I feel like, it's hard to tell the full story right now, but I guess we're at a point where at least we feel like we can put some kind of stamp on it. But it's cool to see Apple getting the rights to this book and linking up with Lena Dunham to turn it into something with A24 and Apple Studios. So looking forward to that. We do have some current Apple Originals that are in awards contention, starting with the Hollywood Music and Media Awards nominees, which were announced this week. Blitz got 2 nominations for Score Feature to Hans Zimmer and Score On-Screen Performance to Saoirse Ronan for her song Winter Coat. Winners will be announced November 20th.
And over to the Critics' Choice Awards. The Critics' Choice Association's celebration of black cinema and television awarded Steve McQueen the Director Award for Blitz. And as well as that, in the Critics' Choice of Documentary Award winners were for The Last of Sea Women, Best Science Documentary, and Best Cinematography. And finally, Steve, brackets Martin, a documentary in 2 pieces, one for Best Narration, which I'm assuming was for the second part with Steve Martin in.
Yeah, he didn't narrate the first part at all, right?
No.
That was a really interesting structure. But congratulations to those winners and to the nominees. Best of luck. It's always great to see Apple originals represented in the world of awards. Let's move to this week's Apple TV releases. We've got a lot to check out this week. Of course, today sees the premiere of our highlight, Bad Sisters Season 2, as well as the finale of Where's Wanda? I cannot wait to see how that one ends. We also have the penultimate episode of Midnight Family and new episodes of Shrinking and You Would Do It Too. Then tomorrow, we have the premiere of The Weeknd Open Hearts, which is an immersive music video, the first immersive music experience for Apple Vision Pro from Apple. It'll be viewable in Apple stores on Friday as well, so if you don't have an Apple Vision Pro at home, you'll be able to check it out the next day. Really looking forward to this one. Apple says they have lots of plans for immersive music content. This is kind of the first step there. Of course, we've seen them collaborate with The Weeknd on some shot on iPhone things, and so this will be cool to see. Are you tempted to head down to the Apple Store and do a little demo to check this out?
Maybe, I'll see what people's sort of reactions to it are. But, yeah, I could do. Give me another chance to look at that delightful new Mac Mini that's there, which is just I went in the other day into the Apple Store and just stared at it for probably a way too long amount of time, just trying to work out how they got such a great computer into that smaller size. But yeah, certainly we'll go down and check it out. So is it going to be available to people at home, I assume, as well? It's not just in stores.
Yes, so on your Apple Vision Pro on Thursday in the TV app, and then on Friday they'll be doing it as, I don't know if it's a part of the demos or if you literally can just come in and say, hey, I want to watch the Weeknd music video.
That seems a bit awkward, like to go in and say, can I watch a music video for 5 minutes? And then like, right, I'm done. Bye.
Yeah, it's an interesting decision to kind of market it in that way, but I guess they want to get as many eyes on it as possible. There is a trailer for it. We'll link that in the show notes. Of course, it's hard to really translate an immersive experience into a 2D trailer, but it does look like an enjoyable experience, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm sure Sigmund and I will have plenty to say about it on next week's episode. So maybe, Jonathan, you can listen there before you decide whether or not you're going to go check it out. On Friday, we have the premiere of Silo Season 2, as well as the finale of La Maison and a new episode of Before. So an exciting day on Friday for sure for Silo fans who are looking forward to getting back into that world. And Sigmund and I are going to be talking all about that on next week's episode. All week long, we've got the MLS playoffs on MLS Season Pass, which, by the way, if you're an Apple TV Plus subscriber, you can check out for free and see what's going on with the playoffs there. In extras this week, we've got an extra from Disclaimer, another show that we're going to talk about on next week's episode. Behind Phineas O'Connell's musical score debut. Learn more about the music behind Disclaimer and the thought that went into that. Bad Sisters Season 2, an inside look, and a series of recaps for Silo Season 1. This is interesting. I'm a big fan of these recaps going into the new season of shows, but it seems like Apple's trying something even different here. They've got the official 5-minute Season 1 recap, which kind of goes over the whole thing, but then they're going down sort of different angles or storylines with these shorter recaps, and they're calling them catch-ups. So there's a judicial catch-up and a Juliet Lives catch-up. And these are much shorter, and they're not focused on the whole storyline. It's really focused on just this one particular area. But I guess it's a way to kind of get a deeper dive into catching up before you get to Season 2, because, of course, we know Season 1 was so vast. There was a ton that happened, so trying to condense it down to 5 minutes is really hard.
I think that's great. I think this is a really good thing. I'd love to see this more with some of the other shows. Particularly would have liked to have seen it with Bad Sisters, because it'd been a while since we'd seen Season 1, and there was a couple of the little dynamics that I'd sort of forgot about, and we actually had to pause the episode about 10 minutes in and pop onto YouTube and find a sort of a rundown, which wasn't that great, but it kind of gave me a couple of clues, because I was trying to remember where Matt and Becca's relationship ended. Couldn't remember, so I had to look it up there. So this sort of thing is great, and I think I'd love to see it a lot more with shows that rely heavily on previous seasons to understand what's going on, because some things can get quite complicated, like on Silo.
For sure. Yeah. I don't want to jump into Silo season 2 without knowing what happens in season 1. I feel like that would be a really interesting experience. I guess if you do that, let us know what you think of it. But personally, I want to remember what happened in season 1 as I go in. So great recaps and cool to see this approach that they're taking here. In terms of TV app highlights, there are a few things happening outside of Apple TV Plus that we wanted to shout out this week. Deadpool and Wolverine is now streaming on Disney Plus. So you can check that out there. And there's also a bonus X-ray edition available on Amazon. So if you're interested in going a little bit deeper into the film, that might be worth checking out. I personally am looking forward to seeing Deadpool and Wolverine on Disney Plus streaming now as well. On Friday, Twisters is coming to Peacock, and on Sunday, the debut of Dune Prophecy on Max. I know a lot of Dune fans are very much looking forward to this one. It's making its way to the small screen, and it's going to be interesting to see how that transition goes, and it all kicks off on Sunday. And that, of course, brings us to our Up Next Pick recommendations for the week. Jonathan, I see here in our notes that you have 2, so why don't you give us the first one first, and then I'll do mine.
Sure thing. So my first pick has just rounded out its first season on FX or Hulu or Disney if you're elsewhere in the world. And it's a comedy series called English Teacher. There's 8 episodes, and it was created by and stars Brian Jordan Alvarez. And it's basically about, an English teacher who works at a high school in America. He's kind of got these lofty ambitions about being, this big influence on these kids' lives and, shaping them to be, incredible members of society and really being someone who they might look back on as in their adult lives and think, oh, this guy really changed my life. And he's already in a bit of deep water because one of the parents complained after he kissed his boyfriend in front of one of the students at some random event, which apparently was incredibly offensive. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, but it's very heartfelt, but it's also just very silly at times. The jokes are run at a kind of very rapid fire rate if you're thinking, I guess, something along the lines of maybe 30 Rock. It kind of reminds me of that, where there's lots of back and forth, lots of quick dialogue. And we even have Enrico Colantoni, who people remember from Veronica Mars, one of my favourite shows ever. He plays the principal who's just tired with life, just wants to just get through every day. He's fantastic. There's several other great characters. My favourite character, however, is Gwen Sanders, who is Evan's best friend, played by Stephanie Koenig. And I think this might be my favourite comedy performance of the year. She is so good, so sharp. The facial expressions, the delivery of the lines is so good. And I recommend, even just for her, to check this show out because she is phenomenal in it. And but overall, the show is a really great show. It's very funny. And 8 episodes. You could crack through it in one weekend if you wanted to. It's really good. Check it out on FX or Hulu or Disney if you're outside of America.
Nice. That's a great pick. I've heard really good things about English Teacher, and I haven't checked it out yet. I don't know that I've actually ever seen a comedy from FX personally before. So
you've never seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
No.
What?
Nope, never have. I watched a little bit of Archer at one point, but that might be the closest I've gotten.
Oh.
But yeah, that's a great pick and one that I've been meaning to check out. Now that it's wrapped up, I might have to do that weekend binge that you talked about. Well, my pick for this week is not nearly as much fun, but it's a show that came up of all places on my Instagram reels. And, constantly that algorithm is trying to figure you out and show you things that you want to see. And it really nailed it on this one because this is a show that I had completely missed, but it sounds like something I'd really, really enjoy. It's called Made. It's on Netflix, and it came out in 2021. It's very dramatic. It's not a comedy in any way, but it stars Margaret Qualley as Alex, a young mother who escapes an abusive relationship and provides for her daughter by cleaning houses, and it's based on a memoir by Stephanie Land. And I just saw this clip from the show and was fascinated by it. So I looked up, what it was and what it was about, and read some really encouraging things about the portrayal of abuse survivors and the way this show handles that, and that it was a very positive thing and one that was done very well, which is great to see. And so I think this is a story, we talk about stories that give you empathy for other people, help you see the world from a different perspective. This is definitely one of those, and one that stuck out to me as something I think I'd enjoy checking out when I'm in the right headspace and, ready to take on a heavy subject like that, and also one that our listeners might be into. So it's called Made. It's 10 episodes on Netflix and all streaming now.
Yeah, I can't recommend that show, unfortunately, because I haven't watched it, but my wife watched it, and she kept insisting that I should watch it and said it was incredible.
Okay.
And I know that it did win a few awards. It was nominated for a few Emmy Awards as well. So maybe you'll encourage me to finally take the plunge on this one, but I also have heard very good things about it. My final pick is, so I actually only was coming into this and was going to only have one pick. So the pick I picked a minute ago, which was An English Teacher. However, I went to the cinema yesterday and I saw a film called Honora, which stars Mikey Madison, who most people will recognise from Better Things, which was a show on FX. And it's written and directed by Sean Baker, who wrote The Florida Project and Red Rocket. Wrote and directed, I should say. And he's a real talent in Hollywood. He is someone who writes and directs all his stuff. He casts it. He edits it. Really takes control of the whole film. And this one is about Honora, who is a stripper, and she gets introduced to the son of a Russian oligarch who, she's 25, he's 21, and they go on a sort of slightly whirlwind adventure. And I'll kind of leave it at that, because once other people find out about that relationship, they have things to say about it, and they are not happy. Surprisingly, despite that summary, it is very funny. It is very, very, very funny in a kind of ridiculous way. And it's a real fun 2 hours and 20 minutes. And it's in theatres now, and I recommend everyone check it out. However, I would caution, just for people to know, that there is a lot of sex in it. So if that's something that you're not keen on watching, then probably steer clear of this one. It's not gratuitous, but there is a lot of it. And if that's not something, if you're planning to go to the cinema with your parents, probably don't pick this film, because there'll be a lot of awkward moments. Otherwise, it is a fantastic film, and Mikey Madison, I suspect, will be up for a lot of awards next year.
Great. Well, those are our picks for this week, and that is our episode for the week. We want to thank everyone so much for listening. Jonathan, I want to thank you for joining me. It's always great to have you on. How can people find you online?
You can find me at Jonathan Reed on Mastodon. That's Jonathan Reed at techhub.social. I always forget my handle on there every single time. And you can also find me writing on at MacStories, macstories.net, and in the club, which is club.macstories.net.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining me.
Great to be here.
We always want to hear what our listeners are thinking, so be sure to reach out to us. You can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes. You can email the show or send us an iMessage to magic@macstories.net. Don't forget, episode 150 is coming up very soon. We're going to be doing a Q&A on that episode, so we want to know what questions you'd like us to answer. So send those in, whether you want to write them or send them in as a voice message. Either way, we would love to know what you want us to answer when we get to that milestone episode and do our Q&A. Sigmund and I will be back next week with the return of Silo and our disclaimer recap. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and have a great week.